This happened last year. I was 34, living on my grandfather's old farm. I wanted to start over, leave the city behind for my work as a vet. The farm was run down, with overgrown fields and creaky barns. I thought if I cared for the animals, I might rebuild my life. One night, I was in the barn checking the livestock, and the bull caught my eye. He was old and barely standing. The wind howled outside, but inside it felt heavy. While I was checking him, strange mist started rising from the ground. I thought I was tired. Then the bull let out a terrible cry, like something looked wrong. Over the next few days, I lost track of time. Livestock began disappearing without a trace. My heart raced whenever I went into the fields. I felt like I was being watched, but I saw no one. I asked a local farmer if anything strange ever happened, but he shrugged it off. Maybe they didn't talk about the past much. I felt like people were keeping something from me. I thought something happened on this land years ago. Curious, I dug through old newspapers in the farmhouse. I found faded articles about a family that vanished just down the road. I couldn't believe it. Maybe this history explained the strangeness on my farm. I started to feel there was something hidden beneath the surface. It felt like something moved just out of my sight. One evening, while feeding the remaining animals, I felt a prickling sensation. It was dark, and the air felt electric. I thought I saw something darting in my peripheral vision. When I looked, it was gone, just trees standing silent. My heart pounded. That feeling stuck with me. It was like I was at the edge of discovering something, but also like I should not be looking. That night I struggled to sleep. I kept hearing noises outside. Were those hoofbeats? Maybe just my imagination, but they felt so real. I got up and opened the door. The moonlight barely illuminated the barn, but I saw shapes moving. They didn't look quite right. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I might be dreaming, but they were still there. I felt drawn closer, needing to see more. Out of the mist I heard a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was calling me. I stepped forward. Maybe I should have turned back. Maybe I should have run, but I didn't. I moved closer, feeling the chill seep into my bones. The shapes were becoming clearer now. I could see shadows shifting. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Then I heard the voice again. This time it was stronger, almost demanding. Suddenly, I saw the bull standing tall among the shapes. His eyes were bright, and the mist wrapped around him. I looked around, expecting to see other animals. Instead, all I saw were forms shrouded in shadows. Then, just like that, in the blink of an eye, the bull and the mist were gone. I was left alone, standing in the dark. The farm felt emptier than before. I didn't know what I'd just exchanged, but something unseen watched me. I could feel it. I shivered as I stepped back into the barn. The next day, I forced myself to move through the motions of farm life. I fed the animals with heavy hands, trying to shake off the night's events, but the feeling stayed with me, clinging like the morning fog. The farm was suffocating in its silence. I decided to head into town. I needed supplies and answers. Maybe the locals could tell me about the family in the newspaper clippings, or the strange happenings. I pulled my truck up outside the small store, its old wooden sign creaking in the wind. Inside, the store was dimly lit and dusty. A few old men sat at a table in the corner, their hushed voices lowered as I walked past. The cashier, a thin woman with tired eyes, greeted me with a nod. I walked over to the shelves, pretending to browse while I listened to the men. "Things are strange out in those parts," one of them said. "Had livestock go missing last summer too. Old Tom thinks there's something in the woods." I felt a jolt. They were talking about my farm. I turned slightly, trying to catch more of their conversation. "People should know better than to stick around," another man added. "Land has a way of forgetting what it wants." Their words hung in the air, but I couldn't get closer. My heart was pounding in my chest. What was it that the land wanted? I glanced at the cashier, hoping she'd hear them too and say something, but she looked down, avoiding eye contact. After paying for my supplies, I left the store with more questions than I had when I entered. As I drove back, the field seemed darker, shadows pooling around the trees. I pulled into the driveway and something caught my eye. A flash of movement behind the barn. I stepped out and called out softly, "Hello?" My voice felt small. The only answer was the rustling of leaves, blending into the quiet. My gut twisted. Rounding the corner of the barn, I stumbled upon the remnants of what looked like an old wooden fence. Several planks were barely standing, overtaken by weeds. I leaned down to examine it. Just as I was about to pull on the wood, something glittered beneath the dirt. I dug my fingers into the ground, uncovering a tarnished silver locket. My breath caught in my throat as I opened it. Inside were two faded pictures, faces I didn't recognize. A creeping feeling washed over me. Why was this in my barn? That's when I heard it again, the whisper. It was soft but insistent, like the sound of wind threading through branches. I glanced up, instinctively feeling that gaze I'd sensed before. My fingers trembled around the locket, and I got a glimpse of something just beyond the trees. A dark silhouette, too tall and too still. Then everything went still. The whispers stopped, and the air turned heavy. I squinted, trying to make out the figure, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I stood frozen, clutching the locket, the weight of its history suddenly heavy in my hand. The unease twisted into fear. I knew I had to uncover what this place was hiding. I wasn't sure how much longer I could go on like this. I turned back to the barn, feeling the oppressive silence of the land around me. I needed answers, but the deeper I dug, the more dangers I felt lurking beneath. I woke up the next morning still clutching the locket. It felt like a weight in my pocket. I tossed it aside, telling myself I'd deal with it later. I needed to get back to the barn to confront the unease that had settled deep in my gut. After breakfast, I grabbed my flashlight and made my way out. The sun was hidden behind heavy clouds, casting a dull light over the farm. I could smell the rain coming, but that wasn't the only scent lingering in the air. There was something else. Something rotten. I followed the stench around the barn, my heart racing as I approached. To my horror, I discovered one of my bulls lying on the ground. It was motionless, its sides rising and falling with erratic breaths. I knelt beside it. It looked sick, its eyes glassy and unfocused. Reaching out, I touched its neck, feeling a terrible warmth. A chill ran down my spine. How could this have happened overnight? I hadn't noticed anything amiss with the bull during my routine checks. I got up, unsure of what to do. The whispers echoed in my mind, and I felt a creeping dread crawl up my arms. Perhaps the men in the store were right. Perhaps there was something more sinister lurking around. I started to back away when I heard a low growl, like thunder rumbling just beneath the earth. I turned my head. The woods seemed alive, the trees twisting as if they had their own will. Bramble and shadow wove together, creating a sort of barrier that felt impassable. I shivered, feeling trapped between the dying bull and the dark wood. Suddenly, a sharp bark broke the silence. I jerked my head around, and my heart dropped. A shape emerged from the trees, a dog, but not just any dog. Its fur was matted and patchy, and its eyes glinted with an unsettling intelligence. The beast studied me, then turned and darted away, urging me to follow. Without thinking, I ran after it, ignoring the voice in my head telling me this was a mistake. I slipped into the woods, branches scratching at my arms as I chased it. The dog led me deeper until I reached a clearing. For a moment it felt peaceful, quiet even, but the stillness was deceptive. I noticed a splotch of dark liquid on the ground, something warm, something that made my stomach churn. That's when I saw it. Tucked between the roots of a large oak tree was another locket, just like the one I had found before. This one was different, though. It shimmered, as if it had a light of its own. I approached cautiously, the unease twisting tighter in my chest. As I knelt down to retrieve it, the growl echoed again, closer this time. Panic surged through me. I wasn't alone. Without a second thought, I snatched up the locket and bolted back the way I'd come, the shadows behind me shifting unnaturally, almost as if they were reaching out. I didn't care to look back. Back at the barn, I slammed the door shut, panting heavily as I fumbled to catch my breath. The locket felt cold in my palm. I didn't know what it all meant or what I had uncovered, but I was certain that whatever was happening on this farm was far worse than I imagined. As I stood there in the dim light, the whispers returned, only this time they were louder, mixed with the sound of something moving just outside. I pressed my back against the wall, heart racing, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. I barely took a breath, the air thick with dread and uncertainty. The whispers coiled around my thoughts like smoke, blurring the edges of reality. I could feel the weight of the locket in my hand, colder than before. Somehow it seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The growling outside stopped. An eerie silence blanketed the barn. My heart pounded like a war drum. I edged toward a window, peering through the grime. The world outside seemed so ordinary, yet I knew better. The trees loomed dark and forbidding. Suddenly, a loud bang resonated from the door, making me jump back. I steadied myself, glancing around for something to defend myself with. My eyes landed on a pitchfork leaning against the wall, rusted and old but sturdy enough. I grabbed it, drawing strength from the weight in my hands. The banging grew louder, and the whispers morphed into angry shouts, echoing my fear and confusion. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was out there. "Come on!" I shouted toward the door. "Show yourself!" The growling returned, low and menacing, sending a shiver down my spine. It sounded closer than before. I glanced back at the locket, its shimmering surface drawing me in. What did it want from me? Why were two of them hidden in shadowy places? Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. The dog's shape emerged from the dark, more distinct now. It stood at the edge of the barn, staring back at me. The intelligence in its eyes was unsettling and strangely familiar. I hesitated, unsure if I should trust it. The bull, the locket, the dog. Everything was twisted into a knot I couldn't unravel. My instincts screamed at me to flee, yet here I was, teetering on the edge of unknown danger. "Are you leading me into a trap?" I called out, still gripping the pitchfork tightly. To my surprise, the dog didn't move, just watched as if waiting for something. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was happening. I stepped out of the barn, my footsteps cautious. The air was thick with anticipation, the world holding its breath. In the clearing, the shadows loomed larger, as if eager to swallow me up. I inched closer to the dog, my heart racing. "Why are you here?" I whispered, glancing back at the barn. I was almost expecting a voice to answer, but all I heard was the noise of nature around me, strangely muted. Without warning, the dog darted into the woods, vanishing into the gloom. I felt a surge of fear. Did it want me to follow? But before I could decide, a rustle nearby caught my attention. Something big moved in the underbrush. Was it just the wind, or something worse? Then, just as I was about to bolt back, I saw it. The bush quivered, and out crept a figure. My breath caught. It was a person, but hunched and monstrous, their face obscured by shadows. "Help me," a voice hissed, distorted and weak. I took a step back, the locket feeling heavier in my pocket. What had I stumbled into? I stood frozen, the choice looming before me. I had a weapon, but no understanding of what was happening. Whatever answer I sought was now hanging in the balance. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. The figure's eyes shone with a cold light, mirroring the locket I had found. Fear washed over me again. What had I gotten myself into? The figure took a shaky step forward, the shadows lifting just enough for me to see the twisted lines of his features. A gaunt face stared back, eyes sunken and desperate. "Help me," he repeated, his voice hitching with each syllable. My grip on the pitchfork tightened, and all instincts screamed at me to run. Why should I? I shot back, heart racing. Memories of the dog, the locket, and that low growl seeped into my thoughts like poison. I didn't know if I could trust him. "Because you have it," he rasped, one skeletal hand moving toward the locket in my pocket. "The locket. It holds the truth." "What truth?" I spat, my bravado barely masking the fear coursing through me. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure hesitated, and the tension hung thick in the air. "I was once one of them," he murmured, casting a glance toward the woods, as if fearing something even darker was lurking just out of sight. "Before the curse took hold. You must listen." The way he talked twisted something inside me. I wanted to take a step back, to escape this dreadful conversation, but his pleading gaze anchored me. "Curse?" I asked, the words slipping from my lips. Was this all connected? "Yes. They want the locket back. No, need it." His eyes flared with urgency. "Their power is tied to it." I thought if I took it I could help, but instead it only made things worse. "They will find you." A shudder coursed through me at the thought of being hunted. "Who will find me?" I breathed. His face contorted in fear. "The guardians of the forest. They were once protectors, but now they're twisted. Monsters." He looked over his shoulder as if expecting to see them lurking just out of view. I felt the world tilting. Spinning tales of monsters in the woods was one thing, but this, the locket, the dog, the growling. It seemed too unreal, yet here this man was, a product of that same darkness. "I don't want any part in this," I whispered, backing away slowly. I'll leave." "Leaving is not an option. They won't let you go." His voice rose, desperate. "You have to make a choice. Either return the locket to them or what?" I interrupted, hands shaking around the pitchfork. "What happens if I don't?" "If you don't, they will come for you." His gaze was wild now. "The woods are alive. Seek the truth or become part of the shadow." His words faded around me, mixing with the rustling of the leaves. My pulse quickened again, every instinct telling me to escape. Just then, the dog re-emerged from the shadows, growling softly and stepping closer. "Trust him," the figure urged, gesturing toward the dog. "He is your link to understanding. He can help." The air grew thick again, and I was left standing between what felt like two worlds. One side promised darkness and danger, while the other offered a glimmer of hope. But at what cost? Before I could decide, a howl broke through the silence, echoing from the depths of the woods. That sound made my spine tingle. I knew then that time was running out. I had a choice to make, but as I felt something shift in the trees behind me, panic surged. The guardians were coming, and I had little idea how to face them. I turned, heart pounding. The shadows shifted again, a flicker of movement catching my eye. A low growl rumbled from the dog beside me, echoing my unease. We were not alone. "Stay back!" I shouted, brandishing the pitchfork as best as I could. But the forest only responded with more rustling, an ominous response. The figure still stood before me, rooted in place, but now his expression conveyed sheer terror. "Don't," he whispered, his voice a mere breath. "They feed on fear. You mustn't show it." Fear. I felt it coursing through me like a wild river. The howls grew louder, closer, more demanding. I glanced at the woods, bracing myself for whatever would emerge, knowing that the moment of decision was upon me. "I don't have the locket," I blurted out. Panic makes us say foolish things, and I regretted it immediately. The figure's eyes widened, "If you don't return it, you could lose your life," he said frantically. "And worse, you may end up like me." "Whatever you are," I shot back. "I don't want this." The dog whined softly, nudging against my leg. It seemed to sense my turmoil, an unexpected encouragement at the worst moment. I knelt, looking into its dark, trusting eyes. Maybe this creature understood something I didn't. That's when I caught a flicker of light deep within the trees, dim but undeniable. It danced, teasing like a firefly lost in shadows. My fingers grazed the locket in my pocket, its weight warm and strangely comforting. "What is that?" I asked, pointing toward the light. The figure looked to what I pointed at, dread spilling onto his face. "It's a lure, drawn to your essence. They will use it to claim you." A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I knew I had to act, and quickly. "What do I do?" I asked, urgency lacing my voice. "You must trust the dog. Follow it." His voice was strained, but his gaze was steady. "It may know a way to break the curse. The locket isn't the curse, but a key to escape. You have to find where it belongs." Time felt thicker now as the howl rose again, closer and nearer. I glanced at the light, flickering like a warning, then back at the dog, who had already started to move, glancing back to urge me on. "Wait," I called, clutching the pitchfork tightly. But the urgency in the air propelled me forward. The only choice I had left was to run alongside the creature that had been my silent companion. We dashed into the darkness of the woods, the sound of growling shadows chasing after us. Each step took me deeper into unknown territory, heart racing as I fought the urge to look back. The sounds grew louder, realization dawning that I was now in their territory. "Stay close!" I shouted to the dog, but the howl rang out again, echoing around me like thunder. Then everything went dark. The world vanished, swallowed by shadows. Panic surged as I lost my footing, hitting the ground hard. Suddenly I heard whispers, low and haunting. I felt their presence all around me, creeping closer. The guardians were here, and they wanted the locket. I knew then that my fight had truly begun. I scrambled to my feet, breathing heavily. The whispers faded, but not completely. They hung in the air, chilling and restless. Fear clawed at my insides, but I forced myself to steady my breathing. I had to think straight. "Dog?" I called out, fear creeping into my voice. The darkness around me swallowed my words, but I felt a gentle nudge against my leg. The dog was still there, a solid presence in the chaos. I could almost feel its determination spilling into me, urging me to move. "Where do we go?" I whispered, glancing around in the thick dark. The flickering light I had seen earlier was gone. Everything felt disorienting, and I had the unsettling sensation I was being watched. Suddenly, the growls resumed, echoing menacingly through the trees. My instincts kicked in. I had to keep moving. "Come on," I said, and with the dog leading I stumbled forward cautiously, relying on touch and sound. To my right, shadows shifted. Panic surged as I caught a glimpse of something darting between the trees. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. Glaring red eyes flashed back at me, and I froze. "Don't show fear." I remembered the figure's warning. I forced myself to take a deep breath, hoping the creature could sense my resolve. I clutched the pitchfork tightly, ready to defend myself. The dog whined softly, sensing my hesitation. With a gentle tug, it pulled me onward. I needed to focus. I couldn't allow these darkness creatures to claim me. After stumbling blindly through the woods, I spotted something ahead, a glint of silver peeping through the underbrush. My heart thumped louder as I approached. Could it be the key I sought? I reached out cautiously, brushing leaves aside. As I cleared the ground, I discovered an old rusted knife, its handle worn but still sturdy. A surge of hope flowed through me. I wasn't entirely defenseless. Perhaps this knife could help me fend off whatever hunted us. Just then, a deep howl echoed, sending icy dread down my spine. The dog stiffened, its body tensed beside me. There was no time to waste. We had to move closer to the heart of the forest, where the light had beckoned. As we turned, I caught sight of the faint glow again, illuminating a path deeper into the woods. Instinctively, I knew this light was connected to the locket in my pocket. A strange pull urged me on, merging curiosity with a hint of hope. "Let's go," I urged the dog, following as fast as I could while remaining cautious. Each step felt heavier, the shadows whispering menacingly, but the light grew brighter. When I finally reached it, I stumbled into a small clearing. The light blazed before me, revealing a circle of stones arranged in an ancient pattern. My heart raced as I felt the locket shift in my pocket, almost vibrating with energy. That's when I saw it. A figure emerged from the shadows, standing just outside the circle. It looked familiar but distorted, bearing the same haunted expression as the man I had encountered earlier. "Don't," it warned in a voice that was both fervent and pleading. Before I could comprehend, the howls intensified. They weren't just howls, but a symphony of voices crying out, closing in around me. I felt trapped, and the tendrils of darkness began to creep toward the light. Now, more than ever, I had to make a choice. The locket, the figure, the shadows. They all drew me into a chaotic web. The moment of truth was upon me. Would I risk everything to uncover the truth, and perhaps even my escape? The figure spoke again, but the words slipped through my ears like water running through my fingers. I was hyper-aware of the shadows darting closer, the howling chorus growing louder and more frantic. The light from the stones felt like my only lifeline. But uncertainty gnawed at me. What did the figure want? "Stay back," I shouted, brandishing the knife. My voice trembled, but I hoped it conveyed strength. The dog growled, a low rumble that seemed to fuse with my fear. For a moment I stood torn between the flickering light and the pleading figure, unsure of who posed the greater threat. "Please," the figure urged, stepping forward. "The light, it's not what you think, it's a trap." A trap. The shadows danced, growing bolder, inching towards the light. Panic clawed at my throat. "What do you mean?" I demanded, heart racing, but instead of an answer, a deafening howl echoed, vibrating through my bones. Shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness crashing against the light. I felt the locket in my pocket pulse, hot against my skin. It might be the only thing that could help me. "Trust the locket," the figure shouted desperately. "It's your only way out." I hesitated, heart thumping violently in my chest. Could I trust this creature that looked like the man I had seen before? I didn't have a choice. Time was running out, and the darkness was hungry. Without thinking, I grasped the locket tightly. As I did, the glow of the stones flickered, momentarily dimming as if the light could sense the shift. I took a step forward, drawn by a force beyond my understanding. The howls crescendoed, and the darkness seemed to hiss in frustration. Before I knew it, I was standing in the circle of stones, the knife gripped tightly in one hand, while the other held the locket. The glowing light surged, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. Then everything went dark. An instant later, I was in a different place. I felt a cool breeze brushing against my skin, and the howls had faded into silence. I blinked, trying to regain my bearings. The forest was gone. Instead, I stood in what appeared to be a dilapidated barn, its wooden beams sagging. The dog was still by my side, but now it was swept with confusion, wagging its tail cautiously. What just happened? I breathed, scanning the surroundings. Shadows lingered in the corners, but they felt different, less alive. I noticed movement in the far corner of the barn. Something shifted, something dark and intangible, slinking away from the dim light filtering through the cracks. "Who's there?" I called out, gripping the knife tighter. The silence was oppressive. The dog began to whine, sensing my discomfort. "Stay close," I urged, eyes darting toward the darkness in the corner. But then from the shadows a voice emerged, soft yet chilling. "You shouldn't be here. You've gone too far." My breath hitched in my throat. Before I could respond, the darkness began to swirl, revealing flickers of movement that made my skin prickle. It felt like the ghosts of a past I didn't understand, threatening to engulf me once again. And just like that, I realized I had opened a door into something far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The voice echoed again, slicing through the heaviness of the barn, and I felt my pulse quicken. I remembered the flickering light. The shadows were afraid of it. But here, in this dim space, I felt exposed. "What do you mean I've gone too far?" I shot back, trying to sound braver than I felt. The shadow shifted again, taking a more defined shape. I squinted, desperately searching for any features that would help me understand if this was friend or foe. "You crossed into our world," it said. The words tinged with a kind of sorrow that made my stomach twist. My heart sank. "I didn't mean to," I stammered. "I was just trying to escape." "Escape?" The shadow's voice quivered slightly, but still held a weight of authority. "The light you thought was a haven will draw the very thing you fear to you." Fear bubbled in my chest. I was being hunted. Something out there was looking for me. I could almost feel its breath on my neck. In the corner of my eye I saw a flurry of movement. I turned quickly, knife raised, but it was just shadows, dark whispers retreating to their corners. "What is it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "There's a reckoning," the shadow replied, and for a moment I could swear I saw its form shift, elongating like a wisp of smoke. "You must decide how far you're willing to go to save yourself." I glanced at the dog, who seemed more anxious now, ears pinned back. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to run, but another part, I didn't know what to think. "What do you want from me?" "Bring the locket to the center," it said, almost pleading. "Reveal its power, and the darkness will retreat." Instinctively I touched the locket again, feeling its heat throbbing in my palm. I looked from the dog to the shadow and back again. I didn't like what I was hearing, but the darkness was closing in. I had to do something. But before I could think through my next move, the ground trembled slightly beneath me. "You have little time," the figure urged. "You must act." "Fine," I said, forcing resolve into my shaky tone. "But if this is a trick—" I let the threat hang in the air. "It's your only chance," the shadow replied, and just as it spoke, the barn creaked ominously. Summoning every ounce of courage, I edged to the center of the barn, holding the locket tightly. The thought of what might come next filled me with dread, but I felt I had no choice. Then I noticed the walls pulsing as though they were alive. Suddenly a sound split through the silence, like a bell tolling, echoing around me. It summoned something darker. I took a deep breath and raised the locket, my heart racing. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready!" Just as the locket began to glow, a chill rushed through the barn, and I knew then that time was not on my side. That's when I heard it. A low growl rising from the shadows. I turned to see glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. Something was coming for me, and I wouldn't be able to escape this time. The shadows twisted, darkening the corners of the barn as the growl deepened. Terror clawed at my chest, pulsing with the beat of my heart. I instinctively gripped the locket tighter, feeling its warmth intensify, almost as if it were alive. I couldn't look away from the glowing eyes. I could sense their insatiable hunger. The shadowy figure still lingered, its form flickering in and out of focus. "You must reveal the power of the locket," it repeated, urgency etched in every line of its distorted face. "Do it now before they break through." In a moment of resignation, I lifted the locket over the barn's wooden floor, feeling the weight of its history and intentions course through me. "I don't know what this will do," I shouted, heart racing. "Trust it," the figure urged, its voice quaking as the growls intensified, echoing like a dark symphony. I hesitated, the gnawing doubt clawing at my resolve. But there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, I opened the locket, its faces glinting under a dim light, the very light that had haunted me throughout this ordeal. The moment I revealed it, a blinding white glow exploded from the locket, filling the barn and swallowing the encroaching darkness. I flinched, instinctively shielding my eyes, but the brilliance seeped through my fingers, pulsating with life. "Stand firm!" the figure called, its form bathed in that light, shifting into something more real, more complete. The growling intensified, turning into anguished howls as the shimmering force radiated outwards. I could feel the very core of the locket vibrating with my fear and defiance. Then, as if in response, the darkness began to claw back, retreating into the shadows. The growling morphed into frantic screams, piercing through the air as the figures within the dark seemed to dissolve, leaving behind wisps of shadow that slowly dissipated like smoke in the wind. I was left standing in the center of the barn, pulsing with energy, the locket floating momentarily above my palm, glowing brighter than the sun itself. The figure, now fully formed, stepped forward from the engulfing light, looking more human than ever, yet carrying an inescapable sorrow in its eyes. "The power was always there," it said softly, its voice steady now. "You set it free. The guardians are bound by this truth, and now they must recede." I glanced towards the edges of the barn, where darkness still loitered. "Will they ever come back?" I stammered, unsure of the relief unfurling in my chest. "They exist out of balance, seeking what was lost to them. You will need to be vigilant," the figure replied, a hint of understanding flickering in its gaze. "But for now, you have bought yourself time." Suddenly the light from the locket waned, and I felt a weight settle back onto the barn, tension lingering in the air like a fog that wouldn't lift. "What do I do with this?" I asked, holding the locket close to my heart. "Guard it," the figure instructed, "and remember, the shadows will tempt you to forget what you've learned." Just then, a faint rustling beyond the barn caught my attention. I turned, but when I looked back, the figure had begun to fade, retreating into the light. "Wait!" I shouted, desperation clawing at me. "Will I see you again?" "I will be watching," it murmured, its face just a silhouette now against the brightness. "And remember, the choice is always yours." With that, the light burst one last time and then vanished, leaving me standing in the dim, musty barn, feeling both empowered and terrified, a survivor in a land steeped in secrets. Looking out into the encroaching darkness, I still felt a lingering fear, an awareness that the whispers of the past were not entirely silenced. I moved toward the door, clutching the locket tightly. I had no answers, but also no illusions. The path ahead would be mine to shape, a constant dance between light and shadow. I couldn't know what lay ahead or who might follow, but one thing was clear: the haunting wouldn't be easily forgotten. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the chill of evening air. The weight of the world rested heavily on my shoulders, but as I stepped outside, I was determined to shed the shackles of fear, at least for tonight. The land had its burdens, but maybe, just maybe, it could also hold the seeds of something new. I took a deep breath, stepping into the twilight, ready to face whatever came next.